I hope we keep RJ. Nothing wrong with everyone on the team besides the center being a threat to score, even though he can put up 20 to 30 points any given night. Would like to see this team as is, and I bet we are 100 times better than last year's roster. And our bench got a ton of experience last year during the tank, so the tank had hidden benefits. Welcome to Amateur Answers. This is the series on the channel where I read your comments and react to them in videos like this every Saturday. If you have a comment that you want to see featured on next week's episode, then put it down below. And while you're there, make sure you do smash that like button, subscribe to the channel, keep up to date with all this great Raptors content in the offseason. All right, let's dive into this one here. It was by Paul Pothier. 6660 talk about RJ Barrett. And I've talked a lot about Barrett, and I don't really love the fit of this roster overall, especially with the starting five. And I think that Barrett is a bit of the odd man out. And this was a comment underneath the video where I talked about the Raptors' projected rotation for next season, where I said RJ Barrett likely will be in the starting five because I don't think he will get traded, though I think it's something the Raptors should explore. And the user here is talking about how it's not a bad thing to want to have four players beside your center who can all score, even though, you know, that's not disrespect Pirtle. That's a guy that can score as well. We saw those flashes this season. But from RJ Barrett, I just don't really like the fit. And I think that you're just missing a lot of spacing with that lineup. And again, it's not a knock against Barrett necessarily, but I think he's a good player. I like him, but it just might not be the right fit overall for this roster, especially after bringing Brandon Ingram into the team. But a lot of people have discussed, like, you know, you don't know what's not going to work. And Paul's saying that this is going to be 100 times better this year than it was last year. And I did say in the video, like, you kind of want that visual confirmation, I guess, to prove it. Even though I don't think it will work, it kind of reminds me of, like, sorry if you haven't seen the show, but, like, this example from The Sopranos, a TV show, actually comes to mind here. So, like, if you've seen it, like, you'll get it. If you haven't seen it, then, like, you don't want to spoil it, then, you know, maybe skip to the next segment here. But in the show, Tony Soprano, the boss, essentially, at this time, was told that one of his best friends, Sal Bobbensero, was wired for sound. He didn't believe it, though he did kind of know all along that it was true. His friend was wired to incriminate his friends. He didn't fully believe it and didn't fully execute what needed to be done without actually physically laying his eyes on the wire that his friend was wearing. So how that relates to this scenario, I think we can all deep down say that this starting five of Quickly, Barrett, Barnes, Ingram, Pirtle probably isn't a great fit and probably won't work. But before we cut ties and trade RJ Barrett, we kind of want to see it in action in the NBA to 100% confirm, oh yeah, doesn't really work. Maybe a drastic change needs to happen. But I understand why people like Barrett. Let's see how it is. I do think it will be better than last season, but hey, for a team that was 7th worst in the NBA, that maybe isn't saying very much. Couple comments about RJ Barrett from this one here. This is another one here from M. Tavares15, who's been a longtime viewer on the channel. Thank you for commenting something here, saying, just looking and exploring trades. It looks like it's a bit difficult to make a good trade with RJ and with what teams have this offseason. So that's something I mentioned there. Maybe they should trade Barrett, but I don't know what sort of value is out there and what sort of trade you can get. So for now, it might be best just to keep him. Lots of teams don't have a lot of picks, and those that do are ones that either don't need RJ or need their own picks. I did think that maybe RJ to Charlotte for Nurkic, expiring contract, and Mark Williams may be something to explore. Get two bigs to back up Jakob Pirtle. Williams is younger, less experienced, and Nurkic could be a valuable piece for a team at the trade deadline. Wow. And they would clear space under the cap for the following season. Nurkic will not be an attractive deadline piece. Nurkic is not very good. Sorry. Again, not a lot of picks coming back because Charlotte doesn't have a lot to offer, but it may be a temporary solution to find a backup center position, and Charlotte can then draft Maluach. All right. Number 4 overall pick, probably a bit too early for Khaman Maluach. Maybe not, but probably a bit too early for him, so I don't think that's going to be a route that Charlotte explore. Mark Williams, they probably feel is a bit more value. Like, they got quite a lot out of the Lakers to get Mark Williams, so I think they probably feel like they can do maybe even better than Barrett. And Barrett doesn't really solve anything for Charlotte. Like that's a team that already has like a couple ball dominant players, like particularly LaMelo Ball, but also Brandon Miller. So I don't think that RJ is a great fit there. And I think they'd like to get off the Nurkic's contract, but they're not in a position where like they really need that salary space. So this one doesn't really make sense for me. Also, the Raptors, like Nurkic sucks. Okay, there's a reason he got dumped to Charlotte like he did. So I don't think that solves anything for us. Mark Williams would be very interesting as a backup center, but I think there are teams willing to pay or like send out good offers to make him their starting center, as the Lakers were. So I don't really see this one working out for either party, really, because the Raptors, like, we're trying to make the playoffs, not be a salary dumping team, I think, this season. Next one about Barrett comes from John Maldonado, 9917, said, I really think we should move Barrett to the bench. Have him be our sixth man and still give him his 30 minutes. Move Abaji to the starting shooting guard. I think RJ once said his favorite player was Ginobili, so let's make him our Ginobili. So in terms of the balance of the starting five, I've more so thought of like if Barrett moves to the bench, like Gradey Dick starts. But actually, like Ochai Abaji actually might be the right fifth man for that sequence because he is one of the better defenders in the roster and one of the better shooters, particularly from the corners. That's valuable as the fifth man, which I coined that term a lot in the channel. But the fifth man, the guy who is the fifth best player in the starting five, but the impact is he is going to be really good defense and really good shooter. Doesn't need the ball to be effective. That could be Ochai Abaji. But in the case of RJ Barrett here, I like the thought. I've thought about it myself, evidently, but I think there's too much talent to that'd be disrespectful in a way to move RJ Barrett to the bench. Maybe it is better for the greater good of the team, but again, do I question myself? Am I hyper fixating on the starting five, which isn't as relevant because you can just stagger minutes elsewhere, take RJ Barrett out after 4 minutes just to give him his start, then put him in with the second unit. Now does the second unit have enough? And I think, hey, maybe RJ Barrett with the second unit maybe makes more sense than Barnes because RJ Barrett better at getting his own buckets and showed good playmaking flashes last season. So maybe not the extreme of putting Barrett to the bench, but can we do it in a way where Barrett comes out early and then you put Abaji in with the starting five and get some more minutes there? Interesting to think about for sure. So let me know your thoughts on that in the comments down below. Off of RJ Barrett now, we have Dre Lucius. I think that's how you say it. 6486 says, Ingram playing 72 games. They will make the playoffs. I don't think this is a proclamation of sorts, but I think the suggestion here is if Brandon Ingram plays 72 games, the Raptors will make the playoffs. So, that's the trick, isn't it? You want to get a healthy season out of Brandon Ingram. Will you be able to do that? I'm not so sure. I think it's absolutely attainable to get 72 games out of Brandon Ingram, but my worry with the top-end depth for the Raptors is, it's not just Ingram. It's a lot of guys that need to stay healthy. But if this team is healthy, there really should be no excuses in getting to the playoffs, I think, next season, especially with the East and the way it looks right now with Boston falling off, and it already wasn't even super competitive to begin with. Ben Franklin, 1770, says, their rotation is irrelevant. Another mediocre, non-playoff season. When is Masai going to get his pink slip? So I think it's a pretty negative frame from the comment overall because I think that this team can think they can make the playoffs next season. But if it does turn into that mediocre season, what is the fate of Masai Ujiri? We've talked about it a bit on one of the streams on this channel. But, hey, Masai Ujiri's an expiring contract. His contract is up at the end of the season. So, yeah, if, he's made these buying moves to get Brandon Ingram and speed up the rebuild, if he's made those moves and they don't make the playoffs, look, I like Masai Ujiri. I wouldn't do it. I'd want to keep him because I believe in his ability to run a franchise. However, from the perspective of Rodgers, who have taken over here, Ed Rodgers in particular, who didn't want to bring Masai back last time his contract was up. Yeah, they could look at the season and say, well, you made these decisions to be a buying team, and all it's done is made us good enough to not get a good pick, but not good enough to make the playoffs. So there would be a conversation to be had at the end of the season if the Raptors don't make the playoffs. Again, I'd keep him, but yeah, in terms of getting his pink slip, if they don't make the playoffs, maybe that could be on the way. I mean, they might make the playoffs and still make that decision, but if they don't, that is a very interesting conversation for his next contract. Next up, we have from Paul Pothier again. Look at that. 6660. Good comments. Says, let's sign Bol Bol, baby. If he decides to put in effort, holy shit, he would be a superstar. There's a quote that I don't quite have on the tip of my tongue that I just thought of from Arrested Development, where all these people delude themselves into thinking it will work, but it never does. But maybe, just maybe, it will work for us. A lot of teams have thought the same thing. If he decides to put in work, what a great player we have. A lot of teams have lost that gamble. So, yeah. Personally, I'll have to pass here. Next comment comes from Mohammed Hassan, EU6WX. Let's get some better usernames, guys. Raptors need a young defensive center. Trade Grady Dick for Walker Kessler. I like Dick, but I think Jacoby will be better. Point guard, quickly. Walter, shooting guard. Ingram at the 3. Barnes the 4. Kessler as the 5. Six-man Barrett as a scoring machine off the bench. Another person dropping Barrett to the bench. Pirtle as well off the bench. Jamal Shed, Jonathan Mobo, etc. Jakob Pirtle's better than Walker Kessler, first of all. Second of all, Walker Kessler would be an interesting backup center. I have talked about this channel, the double big lineups that are coming back into fashion now. But the reason those are like good is because you have like different types of bigs together. Pirtle and Kessler are pretty similar in their limitations, which is not having the shooting and not being able to put the ball on the floor at all. Like they're a little bit too similar to me to be able to kind of make those sorts of lineups work. And I think also from a Utah Jazz perspective, I'm not sure they'd be willing to make the trade. But, you know, it's interesting. Kessler had some time coming off the bench last season. Would they want to make this trade? I'm not sure. This is an interesting one. I kind of like the value, but I think in the end I'd want to keep Grady Dick because I would bet on the upside. I don't think Kessler is a fantastic fit. Also, if they did get Kessler, he wouldn't start over Jakob Pirtle. Next one comes from Sonny Belanger. 6068 says, I would trade IQ, Abaji, Walter, and our the ninth overall pick, and a future first for Trae Young. So you're giving away Abaji, like solid asset, Walter, decent young player who recently went 19th overall, Manuel Quickly, our starting point guard, and the big prize, the number 9 overall pick, and a future first for Trae Young. I'm not sure Atlanta would do that. Might cost one more pick. If Atlanta would do this, I got to tell you guys, it is extremely tempting. There's going to be a full video at some point in this channel about the possibility of trading for somebody like Trae Young, because like contrary to I think what has become popular belief, I think Trae Young does impact winning. I think Trae Young is fantastic. It's been unfortunate that he's been with Atlanta, who have just done a horrible job of team building. They spent all of their assets to get him a co-star on DeJounte Murray, who is extremely overrated and was a horrible fit. Didn't work. What a waste. I think Trae Young's fantastic and he drives winning. I think he'd be so fantastic on the Raptors. I understand the defensive stuff that is really bad, but I think offensively, oh my goodness, that playmaking on this Toronto Raptors team would be just sensational. That's tempting. Even with the 9th pick, 2 picks, I'm very tempted. I got to tell you, I'm with you potentially there, Sonny Belanger. Now we go to the video, the comment from the video that was the previous Q&A, in which the leadoff for that one was talking about trading up to get Khaman Maluach if he's not going to be available at 9th overall. Well, the big topic underneath this video was the conversation of trading down. Here's a couple of those comments here. We have the first one coming from R. Stovern, 5673, says, we can't get Maluach. I think we need to trade down. Pick one of the defensive wings, and then ideally one of the bigs. Later on, either at 39 or trade up at the end of the first to pick one again. And we have another comment here. And then these weren't just the only 2 here. We have top of top 21, so I still think we have more than one hole, and I would plug it by trading down if Maluach isn't on the board. I'm targeting any combination of Carter, Bryant, Rasheer Fleming, Noah Sungay, Coward, a lot of different names listed. But yes, the conversation essentially was about trading down in the draft. So in order for this to happen, you've got to get a really, really good offer. I'm not against this completely because there are some holes in the roster, but then you have to consider how much of the holes are getting plugged by making this move. And what are you actually getting if you are trading down? Like if you're trading down, are you getting 2 first for this year just lower? Are you getting a pick now and then a future first? Because if it's that, I'm not doing it. If you're getting 2 firsts now, then sure. But like, where is that going to come from? I don't really see a realistic way in which something like this would kind of materialize. And I don't really see a realistic way where this is very valuable for the Raptors. So for me, I kind of have to pass and say the Raptors will trust their scouting team and trust their development team to get it right at number 9 against. For me, stay at 9. Don't trade up. Don't trade down. Next comment comes from Giovanni, ED7ZZQ. Always calls me at Jakob Gramenya, just a longtime viewer. Anyways, that's not how you spell my name. Anyways, you can keep doing it, Giovanni. Looks like MLSE won't pay luxury tax. Chris Davis reporting Raptors are quietly shopping RJ Barrett, and Hawks, Spurs, Kings, and Bulls showing interest. Likely Oche is gone also, as he is up for an extension. Raptors can't afford either. Only one getting extension is Jakob Poeltl in the summer. So, a couple of things. First of all, Chris Davis, this user on Twitter, I think it's at Chris Davis Report. This is not an actual source of information. This is not an actual reporter. All Chris Davis does is aggregate information from other people. And look, people who do that in a concise manner, sure. But this is not somebody who is reporting legitimate NBA news that has sources, that has information. This is an absolute poser in the space. So let's make that abundantly clear right away. This is not a source of truth for NBA information. Neither am I, but I don't claim to be like Chris Davis does. So ignore reports coming out of Davis. What I will say, I have never seen this account provide false information just for clicks. They will take information from other people and use it as their own. I would never claim to do such a thing. But this is not a source of relevant NBA information, first of all. Second of all, MLSE won't pay luxury tax. Looks like they're not going to be paying luxury tax. Like, of course they're not going to be paying luxury tax. If you're a contender, you're going to, sure, you want your ownership to go into the luxury tax because that just gives you the extra edge to maybe win that NBA championship, which is worth it. Hey, the Raptors in 2019 won the championship. They were in the luxury tax. They were paying the luxury tax. The Raptors are hoping to be a playoff team this year. They are hoping to be a playoff team. That is not a team that you invest in getting to the luxury tax. So yes, many difficult decisions do need to be made by the front office. Next, from I'm a Fun Guy 936 says, I don't think we got to trade up to get him. This is about Khaman Maluach. I think the real threat is Derik Queen picked early. We got to trade up to get Queen. This guy is just, this is talking about Maluach. This is not my words. This guy is just some African project who's going to be serviceable at best. Queen gives us insane offensive potential like Karl Anthony Towns. That's who Raptors got to be scared of getting picked early. Queen's stock is high, but hopefully it falls enough to us. So for what I've seen, it doesn't look like there's a very large threat that Derik Queen won't be available at 9 for the Raptors. But I think like an incredibly disrespectful way to frame Khaman Maluach that was, I guess, like, you could say that about any player. Like, if you want to draft one player, any argument could be this is a project player. Khaman Maluach had a lot of talent, showcased that at Duke, playing alongside Cooper Flagg. There's clearly talent there. Isn't every player essentially, like, other than Cooper Flagg, a project player? Somebody you have to work on to develop. So I don't see the appeal of Derik Queen over Khaman Maluach, and it doesn't appear the grand majority of people feel this way as well. But, interesting. Somebody very much prefers Derik Queen over Khaman Maluach. Last comment we have here from David Mackin, 3322, says, I know he is only 18 years old, but when do you see Maluach, this kid, as a starting center in the NBA? Who has a higher ceiling, Maluach or Edey? So, question got me really thinking here. So I think for a player like Khaman Maluach, the hope is to get him up to a starting level center. Hopefully like within like 3-4 years if you were to draft somebody like that. Centers do tend to take a little bit longer to come along than other positions. There's different cases, of course, for everything, but typically that is the case here. But out the gates, he doesn't need to be a starting center. So hopefully it comes to fruition maybe 3-4 years down the line if the Raptors are to take him. But as for the debate between Khaman Maluach and Zach Edey, that's an interesting one. I'd love to get your opinions on the comments. Who would you rather have, Khaman Maluach or Zach Edey? So I have a very outward doubter of Zach Edey. Near the end of the season, once Taylor Jenkins was fired, Zach Edey's role grew a lot with the Memphis Grizzlies. But, from the season overall, I had a pretty low expectation. So I think Zach Edey did surpass those. But for the people who had the higher expectation from him, especially from where he selected, it may have been slightly underwhelming from what he achieved. I'm still not convinced there's a long-term future for Zach Edey in NBA, but he showed he can hang a little bit. So I kind of want to lean Maluach. I think there is more upside there. But just from the proof, we've seen Zach Edey in the league, and he can hang. It's difficult because, Zach Edey's got the higher floor. Maluach has got the higher ceiling. So maybe I will lean for Maluach. Maybe that's biased because I've been outwardly doubtful of Zach Edey's abilities, but my gut tells me to go with Maluach.